Okay, so today we have a Junkrat main that has written me, and they wrote, "Can I have a VOD reviewed? It's quick play if you don't mind, but I think it's alright. I've long thought my positioning was god awful. Either that or I'm just always in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm always that guy that dies while your team gets a team wipe. I feel my positioning is the only thing keeping me from staying in Plat at the moment." So I'll be happy to review this. I don't mind that it's quick play. If since I've already looked through it, and there's some things that we can go into. There's some common trends here that that can definitely help you out. So there's two key themes that I want to go into today. The first is controlled space, space that your team occupies and can manage, and then how to position yourself in reference to that controlled space so that you can get the most out of what you're doing. And that's the first thing we'll go into. The second thing is your character's kit. So Junkrat specifically, how is that character designed? How can you get the most out of that character? And the second thing is movement-based ability. So Junkrat has his concussion mines, and that allows him to get into various locations. And we'll talk about movement-based abilities in general, like what type of movement can you access with different characters, and then how can you get the most out of that once you understand it. So here's a reference point to everybody, just so that we can see where we're at. We're on Temple of Anubis, and we're on defense, playing Junkrat. So let's present our first topic, controlled space. I accessed this image using Stat Banana. You can get it too. All right, so the defense, the team on defense generally sets up like in this area, in the blue circle. In orange, I'm representing your tank line, so they're going to be the front of whatever control. A lot of tanks will, so the tank line can either start out in the front here, or they can rotate to the left, depending on where the enemy team goes. Here's a second image, and this is to show you what kind of happens in this game ahead of time. Now, our Junkrat here is in yellow. This is the Reinhardt in orange, and then here's the other tank. And the controlled space, based on where the Reinhardt is this entire region. So that's where your team or our team is controlling. Then we have the enemy team over here in like pink fuchsia, and they're all located here with the Reinhardt in front. That's their controlled space. What happens next? So what happens next here is that the Reinhardt on the enemy team pins into our Reinhardt, pushing him against this back wall. And you see he's squished there. And this changes controlled space. So this is how it's changed. Now the enemy team controls this area. You, as Junkrat, are separated off to the left. Your Reinhardt can't really do much about it. And then the rest of your team, based on where the other tank is they control this area. So the enemy team, as you can see, has bisected your controlled space, and it changes. They've done so in a wedge-like fashion, you see. So you're split off, and you can almost think of this as like a water balloon or something. Like if you imagine like a water balloon, and like a wedge pushing in here. Now your controlled space is pinched so that some of the water is on the left side, some of the water is on the right hand side, and the wedge is pushed in, bisecting it all. So what does this mean, or what does this allow the enemy team to do? Basically, because you are pushed over here in the yellow and you're separated from everybody else, they've split you off from everybody, from the rest of your team. Your Reinhardt can't really do much because he's pinned. They're over here on the right. They can't do very much. And because of that, the enemy team is able to all focus you. They're all able to focus you. So there's 6, or we could say maybe just 5 versus 1. The rest of your team really doesn't have the ability to get in, cross over all of this and get to you. So they split you off, and now they have several people that are can all be focused on one person. All right, now I've switched to the actual view of this gameplay footage we just spoke about, or about a minute in here. So, as you can see, you have your Reinhardt here in the main area. Here's your Rhine. Here's, looks like your other tank, and then the rest of your team's over to the left somewhere. See how this plays out. All right, so your Reinhardt's kind of off here to the left. You can see that maybe he's thinking about moving out of here. But he gets pinned here. And I guess you do have this Reaper here, but I didn't remember that. But let's see what happens next. So it's not the best area for them to be for your team to be in. Your Reinhardt gets killed, and now the enemy team is able to push in and just clean up. You're separated off from everybody. And so your team drops back to point, and here you are. You got your 14 health, and there's no way you guys are gonna win this. And then you're just easily taken out. So that's partially due to your positioning. Let's talk about what you could do instead. Okay, so typically your team can be set up here on the outside, and in yellow, so in orange is where your tank line is going to be holding. In yellow is where two ideal positions for Junkrat might be. So as Junkrat here, you can spam either over your team through this area, just nail the enemy team, burn down their resources, make them pay to access you through this room. Or you could do a very similar thing by being here. You can lob your grenades so that they ricochet off and can damage everybody without being... The key thing here is, as Junkrat, you are not visible. Like, the enemy team can't do crap to you right now because they can't even see you. And that's one of the special things about Junkrat. He's one of the few characters. So you have Moira, and you have Sigma, and you have Junkrat. And as the three characters that can damage somebody else without even being on a screen, because they're able to ricochet their abilities into another location before the enemy has line of sight on them. So essentially, this is a very good way to play Junkrat, especially in this new patch, because shields obviously are not going to stand up very long to a Junkrat. And if the enemy team is pushed in here in this central room here we'll represent them real quick. So if they're pressed here, this is a very confined area. So you can just spam this all day. They're not going to be able to get out of here. You're going to get rid of their shields, and then you're also going to use up their enemy team's resources. So if they have like a Baptiste, which will be strong right now, he'll have to use his lamp. If they have the Ana, she'll probably have to use her nade to heal her team instead of using her nade to anti your team. And so you're making them pay with both their shielding resources and also their abilities just to be present. And then what you can do as Junkrat is, even when the tanks want to push in, you can throw your traps down. You can use your concussive blast mines as a way to as a form of CC. So you use those mines to push the enemy team back, or to bounce the tanks up, basically, so that even as they try to move forward and use their want to push into that space, you make that difficult for them, and you're the whole time your enemy team's able to spam behind them, spam them, etc. And it's just ideal. Like, Junkrat will be so strong in this area right now, in this current patch. So we've discussed why you were punished for being where you were, or what happened to your team for that, and we've discussed what you can do instead. But let's take a look at our second theme of what you can do with Junkrat in particular, by looking at his character kit, and let's talk about movement-based abilities so that we can explore a secondary option for you. something else you can be doing instead of being on the low ground. So Junkrat is all about crowd control in the area of denial. So basically, if the team wants to be in this space and Junkrat doesn't want him to be there, he can just spam that all day with his grenades without being shown. He has his traps, so if they want to walk through this doorway, they either have to crush that trap or they walk into it and they're slowed down. And then he has his concussive blast mines. So the concussive blast mines have the added benefit of their knockback. All right, so basically, when you blow somebody up, they shoot straight up no matter how they're blasted, and you're controlling what they're trying to do. So even as they try to pop through here, you make them pay more, and you control them even further. That's the first. So how do you do this to your very fastest Junkrat? So Junkrat can be effective from a distance in this area, right? He doesn't have to be right up against them, or he can be right here. That's the one thing to discuss. And that's difficult. That creates a problem for the enemy, because even though Junkrat's a real thorn in their side and making them pay with a lot of their resources and damaging them an awful lot, they're not able to access you. So that's frustrating, and it's a problem to solve. Like, how do they stop this Junkrat from being effective? That's the main issue they're having right now, at least if you're playing Junkrat from this location. And there's not a real easy answer to do that. You know, like, perhaps they need to come from a different direction. The second thing to discuss is Junkrat's mobility and mobility-based characters in general. So, Junkrat has the ability to position himself somewhere else. Like, for instance, you can go high ground with him, maybe up here. And this is also a good location. If the enemy wants to get to you, they won't have an easy time. You're right above them. You can just stand in here. If they push you, you're still right next to your team. You can fall right down to your team, get hit, or whatever. Or you can go somewhere else. If you want to, you can even go right above them. Stand them here. You have other locations you can be. So be creative in what you're doing with your character kit. Okay, so now let's talk about the 3 types of movement in Overwatch, movement abilities. So you have characters like Tracer, and she can move in a forward, just straight forward along the ground pattern, right? She can't. So this is along the X plane. So she can only move forward, but she can't move up. She does have a few ways that you can use her creatively to kind of access higher places, but still, it's along the X plane, along the ground, not straight up, horizontally. All right. Then you have characters like Hanzo and Genji that have the ability to just go straight up on a wall.
With honor, redemption.
Now, with Hanzo, he has a little bit of a hybrid approach. So mostly he can access the high ground. Same thing with Genji, but he does have another ability to help them leap. Now, that leap ability isn't like gonna get him very far. It'll basically help him to either dodge something or help him move from one high ground to another. But it's not like he's using that to move throughout the map. It doesn't really help him traverse from one location to another, or to get to far away locations faster. So he has this, and there's a leap. All right. So that allows him a little bit more mobility, but basically I think of him as a character that moves along the Y plane, that goes straight up and down mostly. And what's cool about those characters is that they can get to areas of the map that the other characters on the they're able to get to high ground without taking the traditional path to get there. They can take a shortcut to get to high ground. Say Hanzo wants to get up to that spot up there. All he has to do is climb from this location. Somebody else, they have to go all the way around and use this pathing designed to get you there. So Hanzo can ignore the set routes to get to different locations, the pathing to get there, and simply take a shortcut to get there. And this is an advantage over something like a Tracer. So if Tracer wants to get up here, she has to use her blink and movement abilities to get there faster, and has to take that set pathing to get there. So in that respect, Hanzo can get there faster. All right. Finally, we have a character like Winston and Junkrat and a few others that have movement abilities that can go in multi-dimensions. So they can go along the X. So they use X, Y, and Z. So basically, you can traverse along the X-axis. You can or along the X-plane. I mean to say, this flat ground here. You can go straight up along the Y-plane, or you can do both. So you have a short burst of movement that can allow you to go wherever you want. That's the type of character that Junkrat is. The great thing about that is you can just go wherever you want as long as you have the ability, and you know, to a certain whatever distance your ability affords you to travel. So that being said, Junkrat has very wonderful mobility. He can get to high grounds as long as he has his concussive blast. And I would abuse that as much as possible. You don't have to be on the low ground. So in the example here, if you were on the high ground, instead of being where you were, you eliminate a lot of the options the enemy has to access you in the first place. And you have other escape routes available to you too. You can drop in other places. So, and we'll discuss that as we move forward onto the second point. Here we have the second point. Here is the choke, that main choke that everybody wants to come through, with the two pillars, left and right. And our Junkrat main likes to be here in this corner by the mini health pack as the enemy pushes through. This is a common theme in the video. All right, so let's go into our themes here. If it's somewhat okay to be where you're at, if you have a plan to escape, and your escape plan needs to include your kit. So I would have a concussive blast mine available at all times in order to get out of here. Because if the enemy team pushes through here, I guess I can represent that real quick. So say the enemy team gets into here, and their new area of controlled space will look like this. Make it a little smaller. Will look like this. Look at you in this situation. Now you are stuck in this area. You have high ground surrounding you, and you're on low ground. So you're going to need to want to get out of there. If you have a concussive blast, perhaps you can just go to high ground here, or you can, you know, hop entirely over this area, get out to go to the low ground on the other side. So you have other options of escape if you're using your kit. Let's take a look at another way you can go about this. Instead of being in the location you're at, you can have a similar effectiveness, or you can be very effective at this main choke point by taking a new location. And a lot of Junkrats and other characters that have high ground mobility will use this new location I'm going to show you. All right, so instead of being where you're at, I highly recommend you go over here. Now, this is not the best representation of it, but remember there's pillars on the left and right of this choke. So I would go to the high ground pillar. There's a space to the where you can sit on top of that pillar. There's a flat circular disc that you can you can just go up to. So I'd use Junkrat's kit. Oops. I'd use Junkrat's kit to bounce up here. Now you have the ability to spam all around this choke point. Now let's take a look at what you can do once you're there. Okay. So you can use Junkrat's mines to spam this location. You can spam this location. You can't really get over to the right with your spam as well, but you can at least, while you're up here, you have options to go over there. So you have very good control of whatever the enemy is trying to do for 2/3 of the enemy's options. Now, another thing is, if the enemy does decide to move through one of these locations, you'll be behind them on high ground. That's hard for them to deal with. So, say the enemy goes this way or they go that way. The entire time, no matter where they're trying to go, you can be lobbing your grenades down onto them, into their back line, screwing them up, making them pay for every step they're taking. And this is also a great location to be if you have a Junkrat tire. It's difficult for the enemy team to deal with you because it is so close to this choke point, and they're going to be looking straight up. So it puts them in a vulnerable situation, because if they want to deal with your team and your team happens to be in front of them where they're trying to go, they have to change their viewpoint to be basically turning their backs on your team, and they can't shoot at both your team and you at the same time. So that's a very strong position to be in. And that's the two ways you can approach this. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward here. We're at about 2 minutes and 33 seconds into the video, and we're going to look at some of this gameplay that relates to what we just spoke about. So here we have our buddy on Junkrat. He throws his trap out here. Okay, and he's got a concussive mine there in case somebody comes through. Alright, but the enemy team is not going that direction yet, or did not choose to go that direction. Our Junkrat pushes up into this location that we spoke about earlier, confined by the walls on all the sides, on every side of him. And right now, you have a choice, or this is what I would choose to do if I was going to be down here. I would move your trap and your mine over to be where you're at, because they're important to protect you here. You're on low ground, and you might need it to get out of here in case you get pushed. So if you have the Reinhardt sees that you're in this perfect place for him to get to you. You know, like, if you don't use your kit here, you're standing in a very confined space that he can just charge into, and you know, like, basically the size of his body takes up this entire area that you're in. And unless you use your kit appropriately, you can't do anything about it. Right? So you kind of do something the best you can, but he's already charged, and you don't have a lot of time to react. So we'll back up a little bit. If you put your trap down, you at least make it so that somebody has to break the trap, or the Reinhardt goes in the trap to get to you. That's the first thing. So you can react that way. You could throw it down immediately, because you have it available right now, or you can just throw it down preemptively. The other thing is, why not have a mine? So you have your mines, get ready to do something with it. You can either throw that down preemptively, or you can do it in the moment, like I discussed with the mine. I mean the trap. But you have a way to get out of here, and you haven't planned it out, really. And then you react in the moment, and it doesn't execute the way you had hoped. So first of all, you don't really need to be in that location where the mini is. And if we go back to our first theme about controlled space, your team isn't up there. If the enemy team pushes in a little bit further, then you are segmented off. You are able to be focused by everybody else on the enemy team, unless you use your kit to get out of there. Alright. And then if we go back to our second theme, using your kit in a different way to get to a better place, let's talk about that. So you go in here, and I discussed going over top right here. So, so you can either go top right there, or if you think about this area that you're about to go in, so you are about to go to push in here, but this entire area is surrounded by walls. You can go on top of those walls. You don't have to be low ground. You can be on this L-shaped wall that's around the low ground, and you still can have a similar effectiveness. And that's a better place to be, I would say. So I'm not going to go through the entire video this time and show you that repeated example. I see this several times throughout the video, and the video is available. I'm going to make the video available for you to watch too, so you can go through and watch the gameplay, watch how that happens several times, and think about how you can use your kit and team positioning to your advantage. What areas of the map does your team control? If anyone has any questions about these concepts, both in controlled space by your team and how to use that to get the most out of the moment you're in, like how once you're aware of that, how can you play differently to maximize your effectiveness? Or if you're thinking about your character's kit, especially movement-based characters, how can you get the most out of that character's kit based on how your character's designed? So Junkrat is designed for spam damage, and to be hard to access by being other locations. And he's designed for area of denials, making the enemy pay to go to a very specific area. If they want to head through one specific area of the map, he can make that very difficult for them. So, but there's other characters with different purposes, and I can discuss that with you too. All right. Well, thank you to our Junkrat main for submitting that video. I hope that everybody was able to get something out of this. Let me know if I helped you. That always makes me happy to feel that I've done something for somebody else. If you have a VOD that you'd like to have reviewed, I can help you out with that. I'll provide links to my various socials below, or you can access me through YouTube or wherever you saw this post, and I'll be happy to help you out. I have on the horizon, I have another VOD that I'll be reviewing soon, and we have a tank VOD that we'll be looking at. I haven't looked at it entirely, but that's the concept. While I'm here, I want to represent something that's near and dear to me, a subreddit that I've established. It's called Overwatch Educators. The premise to Overwatch Educators is that only players that are at least Masters rank in Overwatch are able to create new educational content. So it'll be content that has high fidelity. It's something that you can trust. So go check that out. I'll provide a link to that. And currently we're looking for more coaches. So if you are a high-level player and you want to expand what you're able to do, get a hold of me and we'll talk about what's available for options for you there, and we establish your rank and then get you into there. Overwatch Educators is meant to be a resource, so I'm not expecting anything out of anyone as far as any sort of commitment to producing new content, and I'm not putting very many limitations on the content that is allowed, because as long as it's educational and it makes your life easy, I am happy. I want to make your life easy by just putting one central location where a lot of educators can produce high-level content. Students can find it easy, and it just makes people's lives a little better. I think the community needs this, so that's why I've done it. Thank you to everyone who's watched this. I appreciate your time and your continued support, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the next video. Bye.